Invincible is back on our screens after almost 4 months, and I'm not gonna lie, those 4 months absolutely flew by. Picking up directly after the Viltrumite attack on Thraxa, where we saw Mark being reunited with his father and seeing a different side to him following the attack on Earth. This episode saw Mark still wanting to be different from his father in the eyes of his mother, but also seeing the importance that Mark Grayson is going to single-handedly have on the war that's coming on multiple fronts. Whether that be from Angstrom Levy, the Viltrumites, the Sequids, or also King Lizard. So with that, let's break down and explain all that there was to take away from this first episode of Season 2 Part 2. Here is Invincible Season 2 Episode 5, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Mark's time on Thraxa. So following the end of the previous episode several months ago, we saw that Mark was lying on the floor, injured, following the battle with the Viltrumites. They said that they wanted him to complete the mission of essentially taking over every planet and making them fall to their knees under the Viltrumite rule, the very thing that Nolan failed to do. However, he was found by 2 Thraxans and taken to the city where he saw Andressa. Like we saw on multiple occasions in Season 2 Part 1, Mark had a sense of guilt that was inside of him, and a level of responsibility that he was claiming for what happened to Thraxa. He felt as though if he wasn't there, then none of it would have happened. So as a way of repaying them, he wanted to rebuild the city and get it back to its prosperous ways. It was once the city was rebuilt that we saw the main thing about the Thraxans coming to the forefront, and this was the fact that they age so much quicker than what humans do. The average lifespan of a Thraxan is said to be around a year, and we saw that effect taking place on Andressa because she seemed so much older than the first time we saw her, and that was only 2 months difference from when Mark first arrived there, so it showed that she was getting towards an old age and almost dying. Because of this, she wanted Mark to take his brother back with him to Earth, as she felt as though he'd have a better quality of life there because he'd be around his brother. Whereas on Thraxa, people would come and go every year of his life and there'd be no sense of family, especially now that Nolan was gone. This seemed to be something that, as a whole, was true to how the comic book goes, especially more so with the outcome of what happened and Mark returning home from Thraxa back to Earth with his younger half-brother. Debbie's newfound purpose. When Mark was back on Earth, we saw that once he returned home and had his little brother with him, Debbie was relatively reluctant to keep him in the house with them and for either of them to take time off to look after him. But it was towards the end of their conversation where she decided that she didn't actually mind taking a few days off work to take care of him whilst thinking of a solution. This is something which I think is going to be transformative for Debbie. We saw that in the first part of the season, she was lacking any real purpose and was mourning the life that she once had. However, I think Mark's brother is somebody who will help give her that driving force and control back in her life as she starts to take care of him. Debbie eventually goes on to name him Oliver after her own father, so I think that will drive the connection that she'll have for the baby that isn't hers. She found out that Nolan was still alive from Mark when they were sat around the table, and she went on to talk about how he leaves his problems for other people to fix. Although Mark had this complex in the previous episodes where he didn't want to be like his father but saw himself transforming into him, this is something that it feels like Mark won't ever be like his father on. As he was prepared to look after his brother, he helped the Thraxans and he didn't leave problems behind for people to fix. So although Mark and his father are extremely similar, that one key difference is something that does make Mark so much different to his father. I feel we're going to see Debbie growing in confidence more as time goes on, the more she looks after Oliver and finds her purpose and has somebody to look after and give care to, as she no longer has Nolan and she also barely sees Mark these days, so there's nobody for her to truly love and give that care to like she once did. Donald's discovery. Within the first part of Season 2, there was a heavy focus on Donald not remembering what happened at the end of Season 1 when he was brutally attacked by Omni Man when the base exploded. And in the show's return, we saw him confronting Cecil after realizing that he had a robot framework underneath his skin. Cecil showed him that he put this android framework inside of him due to the fact that his brain was still intact following the accident, which meant that Donald was able to be saved. But they made sure to remove his memory of the accident itself so he didn't question his identity. This is something that Donald was struggling with in the episode after he found out, as he had a nightmare where he was being killed by the robot on the bed. Within the comic, this is something that Donald is actually able to use to his advantage, as because his body is almost 100% mechanical, it meant that he had metamorphosis and could turn his arms into a variety of different objects, which included weapons. It doesn't seem like this is something that's going to be happening in the show, but we just don't know yet. So it's going to be interesting to see if Donald ends up turning on Cecil and resenting him, and also if he's going to be able to access this arsenal of weapons that he may potentially be able to wield with his mechanical arms. The main threats. The main threats that we saw occurring in this episode were villains that it felt like were more about just getting us back into the swing of the show. There are only 4 episodes in this part of Season 2, so it is most likely going to need to move at quite a rapid pace. We saw the Martian ship arriving towards Earth, which was led by Rus Livingstone, as he was the astronaut that was knocked out by Shapesmith who wanted to flee the planet following everything that was going on with the Sequid threat and the control that they had over the planet. Rus had essentially become the hive mind for the millions of Sequid that were present, which made him a formidable force to go up against. As the Sequids are all connected by a hive mind, with one being injured, it meant that they all felt it and knew that Invincible and many of the Guardians of the Globe were on board the ship, with Eve putting up a defense shield with all of them inside it, whilst Robot was looking to find a solution. After she couldn't hold on to it for much longer, it collapsed in on itself, and the final thing that we saw was a wave of these Sequids going towards them. Within the comic, the group continued to fight off the Sequids following this, and Shapesmith used his shapeshifting abilities to guard Robot, whilst Robot continued fixing the device that he was creating. Once that was done, Mark then grabbed the device and transmitted the pulse from it to Rus Livingstone, where they then took him and aimed to escape from the ship. So it will be interesting to see if that's what's going to happen in the next episode. Whilst this was going on Earth, Lizard League were putting up a fight against Rex, Kate, and Shrinking Ray as they planned on taking over the states. This was a battle that I thought was just epic to watch, and the ending of it kind of stuck to how it appeared in the comic. Komodo Dragon managed to kill all of Kate's replicas, which just looked brutal, and then smashed the real Kate into her duplicate, which killed her. Plus, we also saw Shrinking Ray being swallowed by Komodo Dragon, and then, even when she got big, he managed to contain her inside and kill her. A moment which did show just how strong he was. With Rex being the only hero left, we saw him manage to fend off Iguana by killing her, and also killing Komodo Dragon. But he did end up losing his hand in the process, something which was in line with the comic. King Lizard was then seen behind him holding a gun towards him where it looked like he was going to shoot him. Within the comic, Rex does get shot, but he does survive. But you never know, the show may look to go down a different route with that. We didn't actually see anything from Angstrom Levy in the first episode back from the break, which is a shame because I'm intrigued to see what's going to happen there. With only 3 episodes left, I do wonder how much of a focus his story's going to get, because it is a relatively big one. I just hope there's enough time. All I'm saying is, we know that he's going to get revenge on Mark in some way by going after the people that he's closest to. The post-credits scene. During the post-credits scene, we saw Alan the alien waking up from his pod, the very pod that we thought he was killed in by Thaddeus at the end of episode 4. However, in reality, that wasn't the case at all. Thaddeus revealed himself to be a Viltrumite when he ripped off his beard and left only the mustache, the very thing that makes all Viltrumites recognizable, and he said how he was the first Viltrumite to rebel against the Viltrum Empire and ultimately founded the Coalition of Planets. His reasoning for turning Alan's life support machine off was so that he could fight himself and come back stronger than he was before, something which was shown to us the way that the machine immediately broke when he moved, highlighting just how strong he was with this new physique and strength that he held. Thaddeus asked Alan to go to Earth and get Mark as he felt as though he was important in turning the tides of the war for the rebellions when it came to the threat of the Viltrumites' grasp. Overall review. I thought this was a great way for the season to come back. I didn't realize how much I missed this show until I saw the episode today, as there's literally nothing else that's like it. The humor was there, the storytelling was there, and the performances were there too. This show succeeds in just having me sitting there with a ton of questions, wondering about how any of the enemies are going to be defeated. And with Angstrom being out there and the Viltrumites being out there too, even danger lurks in the shadows, something which I think makes the story even more ominous, as there's so much that's still unknown. The title card cracking was still occurring, and that suit is breaking through, so it's going to be great to see it when it does appear on screen for the first time. With only 3 episodes to go, like I said, I feel there's a lot that the show needs to get through, so I'm just hoping it doesn't feel too rushed in its approach. But the way that the show's usually handled, I think it should be okay. So, there you have it, Invincible Season 2 Episode 5 Ending Explained. Thanks for tuning into the video, and I'll see you in the next one.